Flying alone in the green room. I know better. It's probably all going as it is already.
It is.
All right, great. So, yep, flying alone in the green room. It's funny. So Don's behind the screens today. It's funny. I was gonna bring in a Ruta's off today, everybody. She's dancing, which is great. We wish her well. I told her don't pull anything. I was gonna do a travel log, Don, and bring in all my slides from my past cruise, which is probably a great green room,
Yeah, it is.
But I wanted to take the opportunity with Ruta out today, everybody, to do something that we really haven't done in the green room in the past. But I wanted to give a live reprise of my most recent presentation that I gave at Gene Jones's very excellent FMCCE conference a couple months ago. And it's a presentation that Don assisted in putting together with me, and as he always does. So I really wanted to take this opportunity to share it, and I wanted to share it live. We had talked about doing this about a month ago or so, and it just seemed to be a great time to do it, because I'll be honest with you, I need a little bit of a kickstart. We're coming into the next legislative season. Committee weeks will be starting in October. And, listen, we got telehealth. That was a great victory. But as everybody knows, there's so much more to go as we go forward in medical cannabis world, and as we go towards whatever legal adult use is going to look like here in the state of Florida. So without further ado, Don's going to go ahead and bring some slides up, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm excited about it and give this live presentation. Let's see if I can keep it to a half hour, Don, or maybe 35 minutes at most. When I gave it live, I'll be honest with you, it got a little slightly off track, because listen, I'm a medical cannabis physician, and it's, what I do it with honor and passion. It's my second career. And go ahead to the next slide, Don. Just as a means of introduction, that's how you get a hold of us, me, Compassionate Cannabis Clinic at Venice Care. Dr. Barry at VeniceCare.com. Next slide, Don. And, you can find us on all kinds of different platforms. It's funny, we don't have the YouTube one up there for the green room, Don, and you can find every green room. We actually have 140 episodes in the can, which I'm proud of. And you can find those at Compassionate Cannabis Clinic on YouTube, and this one will be there all day as well. The next slide shows just where I've been, and OH. Of course, I was just up in Alliance, Ohio, seeing a lot of my oldies up there. Trained at Mount Sinai Medical Center. We do have a second Compassionate Cannabis Clinic down in Fort Myers that Dr. Ald is the director of, and that just kind of gives a little bit about my background. And I'm an Akron, Ohioan, and going into the grave wearing my scarlet and gray and stuff for the Cleveland Browns. Next slide. So, believe it or not, everybody, I just had my 67th birthday. It's one of the inside jokes of the green room. It kind of comes up in every episode, but for me, the significance of it is 40 years of healthcare. And, that's pretty crazy. I started my emergency medicine residency in 1981. And at that point, there were only 7 emergency medicine residencies in the entire country. And we were just coming off the Vietnam War era. And it was the concept of the golden hour that became very important. So we went from literally having the funeral homes, Don, used to run the ambulance services. And that's because they were the only ones that had a vehicle long enough to put a stretcher in the back. So all quote unquote emergency care prior to, the concept of the golden hour was that it was scoop and run, pick you up, get you to the hospital. And then in the ER, you would probably see a family practice doctor, a radiologist, or somebody that's trying to make extra money. But in 1981, there was the concept of emergency medicine, and it was great. It was a fantastic career, and I loved it. And there were a lot of victories. And let's go to the next slide, Don, because in 40 years of healthcare, we've seen so many changes, and that's everything. Got to remember that penicillin was kind of, last century's innovation, and antibiotics and things of that nature. This has been an entire different era of technology and of advancements. And, I think in the emergency medicine world, the biggest victory, in my humble opinion, has been, with the use of the AED. Pop to the next slide, Don, and then we'll pop back to this one. But, The AED, in emergency medicine was the true victory because that was saving lives. And, we knew about electricity when I started emergency medicine in 1981. And, there were monitors at that time, with defibrillators attached to them in ICUs and ambulances. But now, here's Damar Hamlin, lying on the field in Cincinnati, resuscitated, now back in practice, Don, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Felt to be from a blow to the chest, commotio cordis, but it was the use of the AED immediately on Damar that allowed him to wake up and say who won the games, right? So that's the key thing to saving lives in that cardiac arrest. It's interesting. LeBron James's son, Bronny James, had a recent episode as well on the basketball court for Southern Cal. They said he had a cardiac arrest, but I haven't seen it documented yet that an AED was used. But the point is, electricity saves lives, and we know that. And I'm so proud to have been a part of that in Ohio. I had a case where I did have a young man pass on the football field back in October of 2000. I forgot his name, but I remember the case well, and he was dead by the time he got to me. It had been an hour-long resuscitation, and there was no AED back on the sidelines back at that time. So my only role in the case, quite frankly, was telling the paramedics, guys, great job, but it's time to stop. And then, of course, to talk to the parents, the coach, and the kids. Believe me, it's a night that every ER doc who has one remembers but suppresses, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
We all go onward. But I didn't remember his name, and I didn't remember exactly when it happened. So I came in the next morning after Damar Hamlin went down, and I looked it up. His name was Josh Miller. But the important thing about it was the article underneath that was state senator at the time, now U.S. Senator, State Senator Sherrod Brown introduces first ever Josh Miller AED Heart Act in Ohio that got AEDs on the sidelines. Right. And that's an era where we started to ask other questions of young athletes. Do they have a family history of somebody dying suddenly, things like that, because there is some genetics to it, whatever.
Yeah.
So there have been advancements. Go ahead back to the other. Great. Done. Chronic illness also. We have such a different understanding of chronic illness now, right? And we're able to take care of chronic illness, be it chronic lung disease, be it diabetes. And that results in a lot of different things. It results in people living longer. It results in people living with complications of the surgeries they may have had, be it an amputation with, stump pain, phantom pain, any number of other things, So as people live longer, then they're going to suffer certain debilitations. And it's really important to understand that. But people are living, longer. We hope better lives. Technology, of course, brings its own special flavor, both good and bad. The cancer care world, of course, unbelievable advances in care, both in the pediatric cancer world, and of course in adult cancer care. And as I tell every one of my patients, you can't be either or in healthcare. And I'm going to bring cannabis, into it at this point. You can't be either or in healthcare these days. With the advances in oncology and radiation oncology and the various immunotherapies that we have now, absolutely, people should avail themselves of every opportunity of taking advantage of what modern medicine brings you, today. But you can't deny that the ancient plant, right, has a role to play as well. Mm-hmm. And as I, like to say, cannabis was a medicine long before Percocet, long before Ambien. It's been used by generations and eons in literally every society as medicine. So the victories have been great and profound. There have been failures, of course. Let's see where we're going with the slide down. I know we'll get by the Damar Hamlin slide next. Right. Victory. One more victory. This is crazy, everybody. Thanks. I'm glad we threw that one in. So when we did the original talk, this slide wasn't in there. But then a couple days before, I was supposed to give it. I saw an article in my emergency medicine journal about space medicine. It's crazy, everybody. So the Space Corps has a medical department, and there's 3 current emergency medicine physicians that are in the Space Corps. Very interesting, because you need an ER doc, that quote unquote jack of all trades. Believe it or not, they teach these guys how to pull a tooth, and they teach them how to take on an appendix too. But it's that broad-based training of emergency medicine that is leading the way. There's now a fellowship, which is the step past residency in space medicine for emergency medicine residency trained physicians, 2 in the country. And I think it was one in Houston and one in LA. That's what it is. And it's fascinating because, there's issues, how to develop and take care of intravenous medicines, right, when you're in space. How to produce medicines. That's where cannabinoids come in. It's the last line, on the slide. What role can and will cannabinoids play in this new world where you're on Mars and literally you're growing your food? Well, you can grow your medicine too. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes down. So there's an entire body of research now that's tied into this next step, right? And this is something that I never could have imagined when I started my residency program in 1981. It just points out, once again, the accelerated pace, right, of pretty much everything in society today, right? So it is. So space medicine, what a career that would be. Next slide, done. There we go. So the victories are interesting, right? So where people are living longer, hopefully they're living better. And, once again, we need to have an understanding, when you look at heart disease and lung disease and cancer care and diabetes, we need to have an understanding of the effects, of course, on cannabis in these chronic conditions, and always make sure that we're doing the right thing in offering more positives, of course, than negatives. So somebody that has chronic lung disease, of course, it's the obligation of the medical cannabis physician to talk about different routes, right, of administration and the benefits that, people can have. So once again, cannabis can be very helpful as an adjunct and as an assist to patients. Every single patient, as we know, and listen, anybody that's heard me give a talk knows that I can't go through a talk without talking about the 3 things that every patient wants. They want to feel the best they can. They want to do it the safest, most natural, with least pharma footprint impact they can. And they want to be, and they need to be, of course, legal in doing so. In Florida, we have our medical program, which I personally believe is an advantage towards the patient that's looking to use cannabis as medicine, because they can get the instruction of a physician and the physician's educators and staff, right, to use cannabis better as medicine. And that'll be on the last slide, because that is the moral imperative of the doctor, okay, in this space, is to treat cannabis as the medicine that it is. Let's go to failures, Don, because I know what happens, and it's already 8:43. So there've been massive failures in medicine, of course, in 40 years, everybody. And, listen, once again, this is why I come to work every day with the passion that I do, because after 40 years of doing something, you think you want to be better, right? You think you want to learn, right? So look at the massive failures. Everybody knows about narcotics. I mean, that's obvious and easy. And there is blame to be put on that. And you can talk El Chapo if you want, but I talk Purdue, and I talk McKesson, and I talk, companies that literally have had to pay billions of dollars, right, in fines and this and that. I don't know if anybody's in jail over it, but they probably should be. But the point is, doctors were deliberately misled, and I blame the doctors too, because doctors should be smarter than that. But they were deliberately misled by the big pharma companies to the extent of attempting to convince them that, the long-acting narcotics, when they put a coating, okay, on oxycodone, okay, which is Percocet, basically. Percocet is oxycodone and acetaminophen, right? Well, that became OxyContin, right? And then that coating, they convinced doctors all over the country that because it was a slow onset of release, that people wouldn't get addicted to it. Meanwhile, opiates are opiates, okay? People crunched up, okay, the OxyContins and everything. People have died. People have died. It's interesting. It's an interesting aspect. First 16 years of my emergency medicine career, I think I did 6 combined narcotic overdoses the entire 16 years. In the last 16 or 17, 18 years, whatever, 6 a month, sometimes not 6 a day, but 2 a day. Yeah. You can resuscitate the same act the same day, bring them back at 10 in the morning, keep them around for lunch, send them home with family because there's no counseling available that day. Can't get anybody for inpatient, detox treatment that day. So they go home and they find a secret stash at home. They do it again, and then they're back at 6. So, that was the later part of my career. So narcotics, we all know, but gun violence, okay, is another one. And once again, I speak as an emergency medicine physician, okay? We should have had a handle on gun violence long ago, and now the cat's so far out of the bag in this country. I'll admit this is where I got off track a little bit when I gave the talk at Gene's conference, because I think there was a shooting the day before or something. I don't know, but there's a shooting every day. But I'm so incensed by watching shootings. Yesterday, the synagogue shooter from Pittsburgh sentenced to death. But that doesn't bring those people back. So just the fact that guns are so easily available, and there are differences between guns also, Don. This, a handgun is a handgun. There was that shooting down on Hollywood Beach where 9 or 10 people were shot, but none of them died because it was a handgun shooting. But you're not going to survive an AR because it's a more massive weapon with bigger bullets, with higher velocity and mass, and they destroy tissue. Third, of course, insurance and pharmaceutical takeover. And, that's an entire green room on its own. And, everybody knows that. But people ask me if I miss working in emergency medicine. I just came back from Ohio. Big shout out to my friends up there. Jason Kolb had a great golf outing, benefit for him. But I don't miss the ER because of the technology and how it's taken over the ER. So very little examination, true hands-on patient care, because everybody's so darn rushed, and technology has taken over, but the insurance game as well, and big pharma has always had its role. So I don't know, the graphs and all that, as they are. Let's go to the next slide, Don. So we're the only country among its peers which guns are the leading cause. Oh, that's what it was, Don. This had come out a couple days before.
Yep.
The leading cause of death amongst children and teens in the country, okay, is gun violence. I mean, talk about failures. I mean, that's just insane. How could that be? It's an educated, sophisticated society, and yet we've degenerated. Yeah, that's for sure. So, let's hope we somehow get a handle on it. My belief, I don't know. I don't want to get off track. Let's go to the next slide. It's a cannabis. So, right, and combining all the firearms deaths, and let's just pop through it, because I know what's going to happen. All right, so we have a mission. We need to avoid the mistakes of the past, right? We need to break this repeating cycle of idiocy, of lunacy, of gun lobby money, pharma money ruling the roost. And we need to pave the way so the next generation does better. And to me, in the world that I live in, the one thing that I can do is bring cannabis as medicine along, right, in a more appropriate fashion. And as we go towards legal adult use, also help to advise those that are making the decisions to make them in an appropriate, safe, right, manner, with education, the appropriate regulation, labeling, testing, things of that nature. And what does that mean for the future of cannabis, medicine? It means that we need to use it as medicine, to take advantage of it as medicine. When people come into my clinic, they're struck by how happy the patients are. And, as I tell them, listen, that's because we respect our patients to give them the education that they need to utilize the plant in an appropriate way. And then the plant itself delivers. That's the beauty of it. And I know we're going to get in on the next couple slides that, we need to make sure that we're having an honest discussion about what's going on in the cannabis market today, right? And that's a recognition of what Delta-9 THC is from the cannabis plant versus what hemp-derived products are, right? The labeling, the testing, the reliability. Let's go to the next slide, Don. So it's interesting because we need research, of course, and everybody talks about research and, what's the status of research? Well, here's the good news. There is research going on. It's going on here in Florida. Proudly, we can say that we're going to hopefully get going with the consortium where they're going to come out and evaluate what we've gathered this is just one of our surveys. Go to the next slide, Don. I think it's the one where they're piled up in the corner. There they are. So you can pop on back. But, listen, we've been gathering data and observational data. It's not double-blinded, okay, placebo-based research. I got it, pharma, and I got it, conventional medicine. But what you have to understand about cannabis is that it's hard to do that type of research because, and my dear friend, Mike McKenzie, Dr. McKenzie, speaks to this best. It's the heterogenetic nature of the plant, okay, that is always different with different cannabinoid profiles, different terpene and flavonoid profiles, right? It can never be duplicated, sometimes not even from the same garden, right? Under the same conditions, plants are going to be different. And then each patient is different as well. They come with different needs, different symptoms, different desires, although once again, always the same three: feel the best they can, safest they can, and be legal in doing so. But the point is, it's the past usage history that is the final, sprinkles on the cupcake, so to speak, that you can't treat your Willie Nelson type patients as you do your patients who have never used cannabis before. But I think what we can offer to the consortium and to anybody who wants to come in and see what's going on in our clinic is a consistent flow of new patients who have never used cannabis before or who have used cannabis long ago and are not current users who are coming in on a list of meds. And listen, we don't track it specifically, but every single day our patients tell us, and they tell me specifically of the medicines that they reduce. And, it's incredible. So we're going to get that data. We're going to get that research, and once again, the questions are here, are the testing methods that we need available right now? Unfortunately, they're really not, because it takes money to do research. And that's tied up pretty much in pharma. Pharma wants to isolate cannabinoids and do research on them individually. And there's no stopping that. But I say that that's still not going to give us a view and a vision of the whole plant, right? So to me, our observational data, our behavioral data, our survey data, it's about as good as we have right now. That doesn't mean that people aren't doing other legitimate studies. I think there are medical studies that are important. For example, people talk about Delta 8 THC, and we all know, well, maybe we all don't know what Delta 8 is. Delta 8 is a naturally occurring cannabinoid in the plant, but to a very minuscule amount, and everybody knows that. But it's easily created from the glut of CBD that occurred after the Farm Bill passed and people were allowed to grow hemp. So you see Delta 8 everywhere. Delta 8 I like to describe, and it's a simple change of where the double bond is. Too bad we don't have that slide down, but it's okay. Where the double bond is on in the chemical ring, right, so to speak. 8 is at 8, 9 is at 9. 9, of course, would be the cloud of smoke hanging over Woodstock, okay, forever. It's always been known as the quote-unquote intoxicating or psychoactive cannabinoid. It fits into the CB1 receptor as a key into a lock, turns and opens the door. 8, 10, 6, there's others, there's OA, there's HHC. You can describe them however you want. But to me, they're a key that may fit in the lock, but they don't fully turn, right? They may quiver, they may fall out. I don't know what they do, but only 9 is 9. Given that, okay, we have to understand that all the other cannabinoids do have a role to play, okay? But we need to be honest. We need to be honest in what's being sold. We need to be honest in how it's being tested, right? And how it's being regulated. Fascinating, in Florida right now, there's a restriction on the THC products that my patients are able to obtain through the dispensary world, legal in Florida, state regulated, tested. But there are hemp-derived Delta 9 products, as they're called, because they can play with CBD and make Delta 9 also, that are not being regulated, quite frankly, with no caps on amount. And they convert in the liver, is the point I was leading to. They all convert in the liver in an oral fashion into 11-hydroxy THC. So I think we need studies, quite frankly, to see what happens when you take a strong tincture and you keep it under your tongue, a Delta 9 tincture. How much gets into the bloodstream is Delta 9 versus how much is swallowed, goes through the liver and ends up getting into the bloodstream as 11-hydroxy. You know, those are studies that I think have significant value that I really haven't seen much of yet. So there's a lot to do, you know, would be the point. And I got my eye on the time. So let's go to the next slide. Right. So here's the thing that it's all about, everybody, and where I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit. And as I like to tell everybody, and I do tell people in my practice, it's one of the reasons I don't have 15 Dr. Berry centers, okay? When I get on a soapbox and I say the things that I say, and that could be to other doctors, and this was given at a doctor conference, it can be to patients, it can be to politicians, it can be to the press. I like speaking as a doctor. I like speaking as an emergency medicine physician who's seen the victories, who's seen the failures, right? And now, as a public voice, right, I don't want to stand there as guy wearing business hat. I'm not putting business hat down, but it's not me. I'm Dr. Guy. Dr. Guy knows what Dr. Guy sees. Cannabis isn't perfect, but when patients are educated in its appropriate use, and the appropriate use of all the cannabinoids, understanding the terpenes for effect, knowing about sublinguals, tinctures, patches, edibles, suppositories for the politicians, my standard joke, the inhalable products, of course, patients are able to set up a pattern of usage that's very helpful. But it only gets done if you're interested enough in the patient to teach them. So doctors, I call upon you to please treat this as medicine, right? If you're generating cards in your office, you know, get an educator, right? Give your patients the respect, right, of giving them the best chance of meeting their needs. We know legal adult use is going to come to Florida. I mean, that's going to happen. And whether that's through the Smart and Safe campaign, which of course is being challenged by the state, or if it comes through some other means legislatively, or I don't know. What I do know, it's going to be taxed, okay? And it's going to be regulated to the amounts that citizen, not patient, citizen is going to be able to purchase. It's Florida. People need to understand that. So my point is, on the medical side, we need to keep our taxes at zero. We need to fight for the quality of our product, right? With the appropriate labeling and testing and the ratio products of combined THC and CBD at whatever level patients need. We need to make sure that the MMTCs continue to create more innovative patches, right, and creams and other means of usage, the nano preparations that are now very useful for their more rapid absorption, you know, right? So there's a lot to do. We need to work, of course, on job protections in the workplace, the ability to utilize cannabis in the hospital setting, in the assisted living setting, right? Slow changes are occurring, which are great, but they're going to take consistency and legitimacy, quite frankly, from those of us that are out there trying to do it, you know, the right way. So to me, that is the moral imperative, right? And it falls upon the boots on the ground physicians, right, to really insist that their colleagues, you know, come along. So, you know, that. What's the next slide, Don? Okay. Oh, yeah, it's got that. I love this slide because look at the look on the Reefer Madness guy. And that's where this comes from, you know. But listen, right now, especially where we're at, it's 8:59. What fantastic timing, Don. I know. It's such a world of misinformation these days. And it's up to those, especially physicians, right, and others, healthcare providers, you know, who are trained appropriately to cut through that and to give appropriate, you know, information. We need to make sure that our purveyors of every product are honest, right, in what it is that their products can do, and not give over expectation, right, to that extent, but the appropriate expectation is one of respect and education for everyone. Medical profiteering, will always go on. But I think in cannabis world right now, we're too tip of the spear, so to speak, right? With so many people observing, how we're doing it, not to do it right. And we surely don't want to ever stain, right, either the plant or our profession by not fully respecting it as what we do every day. So then that was the last slide right down, and I love that one. So this was awesome, and I really enjoyed it. It did give me a little bit of a charge today. I think sometimes we all get so caught up in the day to day, and it's tough out there. It's the dog days of summer, so to speak. So it was really helpful for me to be able to kind of give myself a little bit of a kick in the butt, so that we go out there every day and continue to achieve the mission, which is good health for all. So I wish everybody a great week. Ruta will be back next week for another episode of The Green Room.